Alright, so where did the name Omero2582 come from? What's the meaning behind the name? That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. And we'll break it into two parts, first the Homero part and then the 2582. But it's not a super meaningful story, you know, so I just want to throw that out there. If you're expecting like a super meaningful story, you know, it's kind of just a combination of things that happened. Alright, so it all started back when I had to create a Runescape account, because that was like the first computer game I played. And this was back in 2005 to 2007, somewhere in there. I think closer to 2005 and 2006 when I first started playing RuneScape and I had to come up with a username. And I wasn't very original at the time. I mean, I knew I wasn't very original. And actually, let me just put here that I happen to have like a great grandfather that apparently was also called Omero, and this doesn't have a connection to the story because I didn't know at the time. Obviously, I just found that out like 2 years ago. I don't know exactly like which great grandparent, but I think it's like my grandfather's grandfather or like my grandfather's grandfather's brother. One of those two was called Omero. And this is back in Ecuador, right? So I'll call him Don Omero. D-O-N at the front. But let's get back to the story. So I had to come up with a name and I wasn't very creative, I knew that. So well, the computer area that we had, it was like the area in between rooms. Me and my brother's room was to the left of the common area in the second floor, and then my parents' room was to the right. But it was a little bit closer to the computer area. The computer area was that little area in between. There was like the hall, kind of, and then there's like a little square box, like on top of it. I'll put a diagram on the screen. But all I could think about was like shows and the giant TV that my parents had next to it in their room. And a lot of times there was like The Simpsons running, and that's where I got my name from. I got it from Homer from The Simpsons. In Spanish, Homer is Homero, but with an H in front of it. Because in Spanish, like H's are silent, and so you just kind of ignore them and you just go off with the rest of the letters. So Omero or Omero sounds the same like with the H or without the H in Spanish. And obviously I wanted to be cool, and yeah, I just wanted like a short name. Everyone wants like a short cool name, so I took out the H. Also because I didn't want to be associated with The Simpsons, because I never really watched The Simpsons, and I didn't want to be like associated with it, you know. And I didn't want to know. I didn't want like people to know that it was from The Simpsons. I didn't want it to be so obvious, so I took out the H, because like in my whole life I've watched like 1 or 2 episodes, and that's because I just like came across a channel or something. Back then we like, I think it was just a little more for kids a little older than me, or like teenagers or something. But back then I was like, you know, in 2005, 2006, I was like 7 years old, 7, 8 years old. I watched a lot of like cartoons, animes, you know, like Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh, all those things, cartoons, you know. The main things I watched were like in Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel. And yeah, and then when we came to Canada, it was like the Family Channel, which is basically like Disney Channel. But yeah, those are the kind of things I watched. And then the like the sitcoms that they had as well, you know, like Net School Survival Guide and stuff. So I didn't watch The Simpsons. I think that was like for people a little older than me, but I don't know, it was just never my thing. So yeah, that's where the name Omero came from, the first part. And let's get to the second part. I wanted to give some backstory, you know, because I know that like if I just say, oh, it's from The Simpsons, it's gonna be like, you know, it's gonna be like, I want to give a little bit more context to it, you know. So yeah, so let's get to the 2582 part. Where did the 2582 part? Well, I typed out Omero in the create an account section, and then it told me that I had to like put numbers in my name because it just didn't allow Omero by itself. I don't know if someone else had the username or if it was mandatory to have numbers in your name at the time, or if you needed more characters or something. Basically, it suggested me a couple alternative usernames, and they had like random names, or sorry, random numbers. So it'd be like Omero17911 or some shit, right? It just gave me like a list of 5 suggestions with random numbers. So I thought, if I'm gonna put numbers next to my name, I want them to be meaningful, you know, I want them to have some sort of significance. And so this leads to the other story, which is I have one older brother who's a year and like 2 months older than me, but his birthday's in November and my birthday's in January. So he's like 2 school years older than me, but he's only like a year and like 2 months older than me, right? So my brother, obviously since he's older, he got his phone first, and this was back, like I said, in like 2005, 2006, 2007 in Ecuador. And back then, when people got their phones, what was popular there was like Bluetooth and infrared, like transferring of files, you know, like transferring of MP3 files between your friends, or like GIFs or pictures or short clips that were popular on the internet. Like people would share them from phone to phone, and that would be what like kids, or yeah, that's what like we did back then. It's like we just like showed each other what we had on our phone, and then we like transferred files. Oh shit, this person's got this file, and then you know you transfer a song or a GIF or whatever. That's what we did back then. So when we were on like car trips, you know, in the car with the whole family, and me and my brother were in the back, like since he was the only person with the phone back then, or I don't know if I had got mine at the time, because I know he had his during a period of time where I didn't have mine, and when I did get mine didn't have Bluetooth, it only had infrared, so it was like the very shitty, like you had to have the phone right next to the other phone, right next to the other infrared port, and then you could transfer like files, but it would take like so long, and the Bluetooth was pretty much like wireless, right, and you could be kind of far away. So my brother had, I think he was the only person with the phone, like out of us two. And so during car rides, like I'd wanna get access to his phone, and so he would put passwords on his phone. But we would play this sort of mini game where he would set up a password, and then he would try and like come up with some sort of meaningful numbers or like a pattern on the numpad. Because back then, you know, people on their phones, they have their phones back then used to have numpads on them, right? And so he try and like draw some sort of pattern, you know, like an X or an L or some sort of mechanic built in, right? And I'd always try and get into the phone, and then he would always try to like, you know, give me hints until I figure it out, and then he would take it, and then he would like come up with another password, and then, you know, we'd go at it again, like, you know, he'd give me hints to see if I could figure it out, and then I'd try and figure out the password, and then, yeah, and then we did that. And I'm sure I, like, you know, at some point I got access to, like, all his media files and everything, and I just, like, looked around, you know, what he had and stuff. Because, yeah, that was, like, the cool thing to do back then. Media files transfer between phones. And so the password that surprised me the most, that left me the most mind blown, was when my brother introduced the bouncing mechanic. And so this one time he came up with a password where he went straight down the center row, where he went straight down the center column, and he went 258, because I was like, what is it, you know, like why, you know, why 25? I couldn't figure it out. Why 2582? And then he like showed me the bouncing mechanic where he just like took the phone and he went straight down the center, and he went down 258, and then, which is the whole center column, and then he bounced back up to the 2, and that just left me like mind blown, like holy shit, like what, like I was super like surprised slash mind blown slash amazed by that one bouncing mechanic, I was like, holy, you know, that's so advanced. Because before then, all he'd done was like crosses or X's or L's or I don't know what, or like significant numbers like birthdays and stuff like that, you know. But the bouncing mechanic is the one that left me like, oh my god, like it left me mind blown. And so when I had to pick the numbers, that's what I thought of, you know. I thought really hard about like what number is significant, and I didn't want it to be something like my birthday, or something like that. That was like obvious / kind of lame. So I used that one password that I really liked, and yeah. And you put those two things together, and it gives you Omero2582 in Runescape. I even had an account in Runescape. My Runescape Smurf was called Bart2582. You know, Bart from The Simpsons, the older brother. And yeah, that's it. That's the new Omero2582. So thank you guys for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I don't know if people like expected, you know, some next level story to the name or anything, but that's pretty much all the context behind the name. And then I just carried it on everywhere. You know, every new game I went to, if I had to put a username, it was Omero2582. And yeah, but I thought it was cool, that thing about my gray. I don't know which position of grandfather, but one of my ancestors' names was called Don Omero, like 100 or yeah, like 100 years ago. He must have been alive, right? I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. This has been Omero2582. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about the video, or if you have anything about your name or something, or anything about the story. Let me know. And thanks for watching. Good night. Peace.